But we'll put that on the video we'll do. But and Dean, give us your story, and we're going to wrap up when you're done. We're going to pray together, and thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Dean Black.
All right.
Man about town.
God is great all the time. Everybody believe that?
Yes. Amen.
Tony. Where are you, Tony? Tony, you believe that, don't you? Collie, you believe that, don't you? I believe that too, today. But I didn't used to believe that. My testimony begins, the story begins, it was July 1995. There was the screech of tires and shattering glass and a scream, and then an explosion of steel and plastic, and then comparative silence. There was the hissing of engines and the noises that injured people make. And I looked down to perceive, I was in the passenger seat of that car, and I looked down, I was spitting blood. I was a trained soldier. I perceived that my legs had been cut off. I had bones shattered. And I knew because of my training I had seconds remaining on the earth. And I also knew that my wife was in trouble. And I decided that I would spend what I judged to be about 20 seconds trying to help her. None of that will make any sense if I don't tell you a little prologue. I got saved when I was 12. I went to Epworth by the Sea on a church retreat. There was nothing spectacular about it. I was out there surrounded by a bunch of wonderful, loving people. We had some folks there from Young Life. And I heard the message I needed to hear, the message I was meant to hear. And I gave my life to Christ at 12 years of age at Epworth by the Sea. And immediately, though, began living a life of self. Now, I didn't get a whole lot of trouble at age 12, but I didn't want to surrender. I wanted to live life for me. And that trait persisted for a long time. I went away to college, where I became a broadcaster while in college. I was a professional broadcaster for a number of years. I went to school at Ole Miss, and there met the love of my life, Judy. She was sweet and friendly, y'all. And we soon got married. Came back to Jacksonville, where I was going to go to law school. Ours being a military family, it was customary for the males in our family, you pretty much always join the military. So I decided to get that out of the way, and I became a soldier too. And I loved being a warrior. And not so much in a good way either. I was full of self, full of pride. I was in a ferocious unit, and I lived to want to go to combat. And I think you have to be a young man, maybe even to understand quite that mindset. But I was married. I had an entrepreneurial spark. I had started a small company while in the military, and still a broadcaster, by the way. And I was working for WYGC FM Gator Country in Gainesville. And started a landscape design and installation company. That became fairly successful. I was stationed up here in Jacksonville at the airport, full-time military duty. I was one busy guy, and God blessed us with 2 children. They had turned 1 and 2 a week before that accident happened. And so, coming back to where we began this conversation, I'm in the car after a catastrophic accident. And I look down, I see the stumps of my legs. I can see blood everywhere. I see my legs are cut off. That's what I perceived. I knew I'm in hemorrhagic shock. I know I'm spitting out blood. I've got damage to my lungs. I'm not going to make it, and I know my wife's in trouble. So I wanted to try to help my wife. And man, Tony, you touched me earlier. I was really strong till then. I'm going to try to be strong through this. So I wanted to try to help her. And I struggled to get to her, and I couldn't get to her, and I couldn't understand why I couldn't move, and it didn't make sense. And then I was really puzzled because I wasn't dead yet, and I should have been dead, and I didn't understand. And then God spoke to me. And you guys, I'm not crazy. Okay, I am crazy, but not that kind of crazy. The great I Am spoke to me. And I don't mean in an audible voice, but I mean in an unmistakable way. Y'all, C.S. Lewis talks about it in Mere Christianity, where he says, you believe in Christ. He says, you can't see God. You can't necessarily touch Him. He's invisible like electricity. But if you stick your finger in an electric socket, you'll believe in Him, right? Electricity would speak to you in a very profound way, and you would believe in it, right?
Amen.
All right, so God can speak to you, and many of you have probably experienced this, I don't know. But that was my first experience with it, and He spoke into my soul. He screamed in it, but it was a peaceful message, but profound nonetheless. And all He said was, it's going to be okay. That's it. He just said, it's going to be okay. And I continued to struggle, and really the struggle got worse because I couldn't breathe. And, when I first discovered I couldn't breathe, I said, well, this is going to be all over here in a second. And I kept gasping for air. They finally got me out of the car. They got me to the car. They transported me to the hospital. And I'm still focused. I'm a soldier, so I'm focused on my mission, man. I had to figure out about my wife. And if you don't have any air, it's really hard to talk. And so I would work really hard at getting little sips of air. And I'd work up a little bit of oxygen, and then I could only speak one syllable at a time, and then whisper at that. And I would say, my. You probably can't hear me. I would say, my. And then I'd have to work at it. A long time would go by, and I would say, wife. But in a faint whisper. And I just repeated that for the longest time. I don't know how long. And when they cut me out of the car, I was dumbfounded because I discovered that the seat had broken loose and run over my legs. And I had just blown blood out everywhere over my knees, and it just looked like my legs were gone. So I was just dumbfounded to discover that I had legs. And at the hospital, I kept asking about my wife. And finally they decided that, and I kind of knew. Because I had been trained in the military, and I knew. And I could tell by their reaction. But they finally told me what I had feared, that I had lost my wife. And in that moment, I became a single dad of a 1-year-old and 2-year-old. The 1-year-old, they had just had their birthday the week before. One was still being breastfed. And I was mad at God. I didn't want to hear anybody say God is great all the time. I was mad as hell. I laid there in that hospital bed, and I couldn't get enough air. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't move. But I raged in my mind. God, you're stupid, I said in my mind. I meant it too. When I get there, because I was saved, I knew I was going to get there, and I was going to call Him on the carpet. What in the hell are you thinking? I'm a soldier. We planned on me to die. I got a will. I'm a soldier. We already knew that could happen. Why in the hell would you take a young girl, my precious Judy, she's breastfeeding our baby. Those babies need their mother. They can do without their dad. What in the hell is the matter with you? That's what I was saying in my mind. Long time passed. I say a long time. 6 months, 8 months. They have to put me back together. The landscape company had to go by the wayside because that was a lot of management by walking around. I wasn't going to be doing any walking. So that business went to my partner. I couldn't stay in the military anymore. I was in a combat unit and I was not going to be material for that. So I lost my career. I lost my wife. I lost my health. And I was pretty mad at God. I had to have surgery on my knees. I went to Jacksonville Orthopedic Institute. My mother came with me. And I wouldn't let them do general anesthesia. Because I said, look, sometimes people don't wake up from that, and I'm not doing general anesthesia. So I'm a tough guy. I mean, I don't look like much right now, but a few months ago, I was all macho and rough and tough. And, do you know what unit I was in? So what you can do, you just give me something to bite and give me a fifth of liquor, and we're going to be good. I don't know if any of you know Dr. Hardy from Jacksonville Orthopedic Institute. He's retired now, I hear. A British fellow. He said, oh, my word, we positively can't do that. And so he explained to me that they could just do an epidural, like ladies have when they're going to have a child. And it would just deaden me from here down, and I'd be able to be conscious for the whole thing. And I said, okay, good, that's what we'll do then. So they did that, and I came into the recovery room. And I came into the recovery room, mother's waiting on me, and they won't let you leave until everything starts working from here down. And so, there we are. And in walks this nurse. In walks this nurse, and God spoke to me again. And a long time had passed since he had spoken to me in the car. And I had thought, maybe that's not real, maybe, no, but it is real. I know that was real. That's not, that happened, that really happened, and what about that? And then he spoke to me again in that recovery room. In the same way, directly into my spirit, like electricity, absolutely unmistakable, he said, behold your wife. I was not interested in a wife. I was heartbroken. I was not in any condition to be courting anybody. But that's what he said. I didn't say much. I'm sitting there, I'm kind of not dressed, and so I'm just sitting there. But my mother started talking to this nurse. And it was coming up on the holidays. And she finds out, she's going to talk. She finds out she's from out of town. Oh, really? Are you going home for the holidays? Well, no. Oh, well, are you going to have anybody to have Thanksgiving with? Well, no. Oh, well, you're coming to our house then. I'm laying there in the hospital bed, and I am watching this, and I just heard him, and I can't believe it. Kim, Nurse Kim, came to my house for Thanksgiving. My mother insisted that she'd also be there for Christmas, as well as New Year's dinner. And we struck up a conversation or two or three or 10. And if you've heard it from God that you're supposed to marry this person, which is clearly what I heard, well, eventually you figure you better get around to asking them out. So I finally said, okay, let's go out. We started dating. And things were going reasonably well. And if you've heard it from God that they're going to be your wife, you figure eventually you should probably ask them to marry you. So I popped the question. What do you think she said? Nope, not going to marry you. I'm like, what do you mean, no? I mean, I'm Dean Black. I mean, I understand I lost a lot of weight, but and all that, and I'm kind of, going through a few things, but come on now. And nope, not going to marry you. I said, well, why? She said, well, because you don't go to church.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I see that. I'm a military guy. We got a checklist for everything. Okay, if we don't go to church and there's the problem, well, we're going to go to church. However, the church I grew up with, I don't like that church. Matter of fact, I hate that church. Matter of fact, that church kind of got filled with something called the Holy Spirit. There was girls shaking a tambourine right next to me. I hate that church. We're not going to that church. Let's go to some other church. So I took her church shopping. I'm looking for the church that'll let me do whatever I want to do, right? So we go from church to church to church. And finally she's getting a little frustrated with me because I go, nope, not that one, nope, not that one, nope, not that one. Finally, I decided to take her back to that church that I didn't like, the church of my youth, and we're going to go back there. And this is straight up manipulation. Straight up manipulation. I wanted her to go there because I wanted her to see me with people who knew me and had seen that I was in that church before.
Okay.
So we went there and we were late. And I should add, my 2 children, and she had a little boy from a previous relationship. So we show up there, we're late. We're all, when you got little kids, you're late to everything. You just give up being on time ever. We had to sit right in the front, and there is that lady with the darn tambourine. And I sat there and I hated it, is the truth. I did not want to be there. I hated it. This was a minute, I'm just trying to get a wife here, And so I'm sitting there. The pastor says, so good to see you, and I just, and shortly in that sermon, God spoke to me again. The same way, unmistakably. He said, I want you here. And I'm like, oh no! I hate this place. I don't like that pastor. I don't like her. I don't want to be here. And I turned to Kim and I said, Kim, I kind of think I heard from God and we're kind of supposed to be here. She said, okay. Which was kind of an odd way to say that. I said, okay, what? What do you mean? You mean, okay, go to church here or okay, marry me? She says, both.
Wow.
And so we got married. A few months go by. We're going to this church. I would always race the pastor to the back of the church. I'd try to get out before he got back there, and he's a fast little sucker. He would get back there so he could shake my hand and tell me how glad he was that I was there. I still didn't want to be there, all right, because this is a story about a very disobedient man, okay? He would tell me how good it was to see me, and I felt like I had to be honest with him. I'd say, okay, Pastor, well, I don't really want to be here. I'm just here because God said to be here. And he's like, yeah, and you keep coming back. We'll see you next Sunday. And so one Sunday, they do the call for anybody that wants to receive Christ into their life. And all of a sudden, my wife Kim stands up. And I didn't know, I thought maybe she dropped something. And she gets up and she walks down the aisle, gets on her knees, and gives her life to Christ. I was dumbfounded. I thought she was a Christian. And she gets back and I'm like, oh, what the heck was that about? She says, oh no, I wasn't a Christian. I just knew going to church was a big deal, so I wasn't going to marry you unless you went. Whoa! She got pregnant.
Okay.
We had a baby. She got pregnant again. Had another baby. I was still living life largely for self. I had gone out and needed to put my life back together. There was an Amco Transmissions franchise that was going out of business, being disenfranchised for dishonest business practices, actually, and I had a little bit of money, and I decided to look into that. And looking at it as a turnaround project, I thought, okay, well, actually the brand is good, the product is good, the location's okay. None of that seems to be hard. The only problem with this business is well, they seem to be crooks. And that's actually pretty easy to turn around. I mean, the answer would be, don't be a crook. So I bought that Amco Center, and things started going relatively well. And decided that I would develop another Amco Center, which we did. Because I wanted a business where I would have just a few employees, and I'd kind of take care of them, and then they'd kind of take care of us. And I was going to run it according to Christian principles, because I was a Christian, if a disobedient one. And I went off one weekend, and when I came back the following Monday, one of my fellow Amco franchise owners came in my office. He says, "Congratulations." I said, "What'd I win?" He said, "Nothing. We just made you chairman of the Advertising Association. Good luck. 2 people are in default. Nothing works. It's a disaster." I'm like, "What? I didn't even know there was a meeting." He says, "Yeah, you better check your fax machine next time." So I became chairman of the Advertising Association, and I decided, okay. I went up to my father-in-law, who is a priest, and we began praying about it. And that's when I really earnestly started bringing God into the business in a really overtly serious way. I said, "God, what am I going to do with this?" He says, "Well, everybody's got to keep their word. And everybody's word's in that contract." So I went back, I said, "Everybody, you're going to do what's in this contract. You're in default. I'm about to sue you and put you out of business. And you're next, only because I can't do 2 lawsuits at once. I'm busy." Well, they couldn't wait to pay me fast enough. And we got our advertising together, but we were literally among the worst markets in the world. And I met with my pastor and prayed. And we decided, it came to me actually on a Thanksgiving weekend. I said, "Okay, God, these guys hate each other. You know, they don't get along. They're all about themselves. What am I going to do?" And he told me. He literally spoke to me again. Now for the 4th or 5th time? And he told me in a flash. He says, "Dean, what you're going to do, you're going to get a bunch of broke cars. You're going to fix those cars. You're going to give them away to needy families. You're going to call it Cars for Christmas. And you're going to do that all by Christmas, and this is Thanksgiving." And I'm like, "Oh, there's no way. You don't know what you're talking about, God, because there's no time for that. I'd have to get corporate approval. They can't agree on a toilet paper vendor in less than 6 weeks. There's no way they'll approve this. Plus, the guys probably don't even have any cars to fix and give away. If they would give them away, they're not going to do that. They could sell them. No, that's not going to ever work. But okay, I'll go ask." So I get back in town. I call corporate. Corporate says, "Man, that's a great idea. Let us know what we can do to help." I call all the Amco owners. They go, "Yeah, man, we got a car. That sounds like a great idea. We're down for that, everybody." In no time flat, this was approved. I thought, well, there's no way the radio stations will help us promote it, even though we advertised with them, because it's the time before Christmas. They're booked. I called them. They all said, "Oh, yeah, that's great. We'll all help." A lady named Angelique won one of those cars. Angelique still calls me. We met downtown. I went down there to give her her car. Angelique had 6 kids. Angelique had her husband get up and walk out in the middle of dinner and abandon them. She never saw him again. Angelique lost her car. Angelique lost her home. Angelique found herself homeless with 6 kids, except they won't let you live in the shelter with 6 kids. So they took Angelique's kids. And the kids were too many, so they were split up too. And Angelique was trying to get her life back together. And she had worked to get a skill. She had to hold a job for a certain amount of time. She then had to not only hold that job, but get a place to live. And the last thing that Angelique had to have to get her kids back was reliable transportation. And I went down there and awarded Angelique her car. And unbeknownst to us, out of the building were some of the government bureaucrats who came rushing forward That was the last thing on their checklist she had to have. And Angelique got her kids back for Christmas. God is great all the time. I told you a while ago I thought God was stupid. I told him that. I gradually got more and more obedient to God, but I still rebel pretty much every day. But I know better. And here's how dumb God is. It's true, God took my first wife, Judy. And she was a wonderful, wonderful girl, but she was a Christian. She had unshakable faith. No question about it. And I know where she is today. So he called one of his own home. And it's true, he took away my job, but he gave him another. And while he called my wife, he provided still another. And in the process, won another soul for him. He had to break up my body because I was too prideful. I didn't use it for his glory anyway. But in doing that, he drove me to my knees and made me a more humble man, made me more useful to him, made me a servant to him. It's true that he took away the mother of my two children, but he provided another, and he also provided a father to a little boy, Nathan, from Kim's previous relationship. And I've raised him as my own. And then two other children who were born into this relationship and raised by imperfect parents, yes, but in as good a Christian home as I could contrive to make. So God is great all the time. I used to think that if I could go back and change it, I used to think if we would leave, if we could have gone back and done that trip that led to the accident differently, we would turn right instead of left, or maybe stop for that red light and change the timing so it wouldn't have happened. Now I know what God's plan was. I see his purpose. And if I could go back and change it, I would. Because today I know God is great all the time. That's my testimony.
Yeah.
Now you want me to talk about Republican Party, or are you making me stop?
Since Dean is the chairman of the Republican Party, I've given him the permission. Tell us a little bit about the election real quick, because we've got 3 minutes or so to wrap up before we head out of here, okay?
Okay. That's just a continuation of testimony. Politics shouldn't be a career, it should be a calling. I've been involved in politics since I was called to run for Congress back in 2010, and by the will of the people did not win. God didn't tell me I'd win. He told me run. And I came in second, and that got me involved in the party because I was obedient to him. And by the way, I didn't want to do it. Starting to see a pattern here. Don't want to go to your church, God. Don't want to do this, don't want to do that. But under protest, I ran for Congress, got involved with the party. Things were not going well over the past few years here locally. In Duval County, those of us who are really involved in politics, we have known for years that Duval County had a very important strategic role to play in our politics. Namely, Duval County would always turn out large numbers of Republican votes, and that would offset the liberal votes from down in South Florida. As long as we did our job, that would happen. If we didn't do it, it wouldn't happen. And we ended up with large numbers of left-wing funded organizations coming into Duval County, registering voters back in 2015. Now look, I'd been involved in partisan politics for a long time, and we used to argue about the same old stuff that y'all have all heard about. We used to argue about more government, less government. But a fundamental change has happened now. We're very polarized. We're polarized now for very good reasons. We don't argue about more government or less government anymore. The other side says they're straight up for socialism. We used to argue about, is abortion good or bad, and we don't argue about that anymore because now we're talking about killing our kids on the table after they're born and cutting them up and selling the pieces. We used to talk about more immigration or less immigration. That isn't what we're talking about. Now they say, let's dissolve the border, let an infinite number of people come in, and oh, by the way, we're going to give them free health care. We're going to nationalize that, and we can't even run the VA. And I watched what happened in 2018. Duval County went blue for the first time in 35 years. A man running as an avowed socialist won Duval County by 17,000 votes. And I knew, because of what I do, that that was terrifying for those who believe in Christian values. Because I do believe that we stand at a turning point. If the values that I know all of us share here are going to be pursued by righteous leadership, the coming election is pivotal. We stand at a turning point in history. Now my plan, you've all learned my plans. They're all messed up. My plan was to run for city council. I was going to run for an at-large city council seat. And I had sort of organized my life to that purpose. My kids had grown up, and that's what I was going to do. And then, this guy. It's all your fault. Suggested to me, Dean, you know, what happened in 2018, that is really bad stuff, and you really ought to think about running for party chair. I said, no, why would I want that? That's the worst political job in the world. And I don't want to do that. I'm going to run for council. But there was a guy named Terrence Freeman who was also planning on running for that seat. And we knew that was going to be a difficult race, man. Me and him, we were going to just rip each other apart. But I loved that guy. I liked that guy. So I decided to put Christian principles into play that we're taught to use. Met with him. He and I sat, and we talked. And we prayed. And we talked. And we prayed. For 3 hours. I know you don't believe I could really speak for 3 hours, do you? And it became apparent to me that God had sent him to run for that seat and was calling me to do this other task that, although I didn't want to do it, I learned from experience to always trust him because he's never wrong. And so I ran for chair. I won by 3 votes, which in Florida is a landslide, by the way. If you don't have your election decided by the Supreme Court, it is a landslide in Florida. And we have been building an organization now. I'm a businessman. This is not a complicated business. The problem that you have here is you have George Soros, Tom Steyer, some leftist socialist groups, and they say that. That's not my words. I'm not casting stones. Those are their words. Okay, they are here changing the dynamic, making a strategic bid to flip Florida, because they know if they flip Duval County, they flip Florida. If you flip Florida, you can never have another conservative president ever again. We have a moment before us where we can achieve real strategic victory. If we re-elect this president, and he's not perfect, this conversation, all of it, has really been about how God uses imperfect people.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
But if you re-elect him, he's going to continue to pack the federal court. Over the next 50 years, the next several generations or so, a lot of this secular, humanist,
Carbon copy fuel.
that will fade away. And we can bequeath to our posterity, to those who come after us, a prosperous nation that's living in the light. And that's why I'm working like heck to do that. We've built an organization wherein we are, in the 3rd week of this month, going to unleash a massive counterattack. It's massive retaliation from all quarters, all across the county. It's a mathematical equation. I've done the math. I've got a business plan. I can show you how it works. And I'd like to, because I can't do this by myself. And I need your help. And
So you're
whether
seeking
you
volunteers? You're seeking volunteers?
we are recruiting. I need volunteers by the thousands. And we are going to actually do something unprecedented. We are going to do a media campaign wherein we recruit volunteers by the thousands. Now, in politics, they do media campaigns all the time. It says, vote for me, or don't vote for that scoundrel. That's not the type of campaign I'm talking about. We are simply doing a campaign, come help, come volunteer, because we've got to scale up massive numbers. and that's what we're going to do. Whether you want to volunteer your time, or whether you want to volunteer your money, or whether you can only volunteer your prayers, or some combination of those things, I need your help. If you're willing to help, either by volunteering your time or money or prayers or any combination of those things, Alexander, actually Bill, is passing out a form. If you please fill that out and give it back to either Bill or to Alexander, I'll be in touch. Now, if you have any questions, I'd love to answer those if he will let me.
Well, let's all stand together right now. We're going to adjourn and we'll pray. And stick around if you'd like to talk to Dean about it more. And anybody else you want to talk to about it today?